We are live, and you are tuning in to the Sports Insiders. I am the sniper. He's the that way. He is the sports agent, Sean Russi, and we are bringing you a show tonight, just a little bit before, because I know the NFL season kicks off tonight. The regular season kicks off tonight with Cowboys Eagles. Just a quick 15 minutes with us, and we'll have you right out there on your way. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels at Sideline Sport One. We are on. Almost said Xbox. I wish we had a game on Xbox. Okay, we are on X, Facebook, link. Well, Joe Ellis is on LinkedIn, Instagram, and also two channels on TikTok, or two TikToks rather, at Sideline Sports and Sideline One Sports. So on YouTube as well. Of course, you're watching us here on YouTube. So give us that follow, click the like and subscribe button for more updates. We are on all week, every week, and something hot that's going on, because there's a team that's going to set foot on that field here in about 30 minutes without who was their best defensive player, and that is Micah Parsons, linebacker Micah Parsons, who was traded this past week for Kenny Clark and 2 first-round picks. Parsons was then going to sign the highest non-quarterback contract in NFL history at 4 years, $188 million, $120 guaranteed. Sean, take it away. Your thoughts about this and on Jerry Jones's remarks after the fact.
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny. It's more the remarks than some of the actual trade that he got here. But Kenny Clark is not a bad defender. He's more being, unfortunately thrown under the bus, so to speak, because of who he was traded for and the lack of the return that Dallas actually took for him.
Right.
2 first-round picks expected to be in the 20 to 30 range.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like that probably won't turn out to be Micah Parsons, but obviously there's an outside chance there. But the history percentages say you're not getting a Micah Parsons in that range.
Yeah.
Obviously you could potentially package those picks and maybe either move up or get a player or two. So we'll see what Jones does with those. But like you said, the comments afterwards about moving Parsons because they needed help stopping the run. Again, I don't know if Kenny Clark is the answer to just the entire struggle that defensive line has had for Dallas over the last couple of years, because it hasn't been the secondary. Secondary hasn't been the problem. It's been the line, and Jones is right. They can't stop the run, but I don't think Kenny Clark is a plug-in and here's your one player solution here. And then the 2 first-round picks being low, and then he compared it to the Walker trade. And we'll do a quick comparison here for the Walker details, especially with the Netflix doc out. A lot of people have been on this for the last week. In the Walker trade, they got 5 players and 6 picks. The players they got weren't a lot to sneeze at, but they contributed. It was Jesse Solomon, David Howard at linebacker, cornerback Isaac Holt, running back Darren Nelson, defensive end Alex Stewart. But what they ultimately turned the picks into was Emmitt Smith and Darren Woodson, both who ended up winning 3 Super Bowls with the Cowboys.
Turned into the Cowboys dynasty, yeah.
Yeah, so to compare what you netted from that to 2 late round first picks and Kenny Clark, it just seems, kind of ridiculous, and just him trying to save face with maybe a casual Dallas fan. But I think, a smart fan is going to know that this was just a bad trade all around, a bad deal all around, and just really just another chapter of Jerry Jones' ego refusing to humble himself. And, instead of costing the Cowboys a coach this time, he cost them a star player.
Right. Absolutely. And, with something like this, it's very hard. It's very hard to swallow. Jerry Jones is most definitely out of touch with this one. Some people have said that he may have sold the team back in the 90s. I know they had the Netflix special and everything like that. I actually got yet to watch it. But this is more Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is more in love with star power than winning. I don't know. I kind of feel like he's felt like, man, I've kind of rested. I won my rings. I'm good. It's just whatever, from this time period on. He says, like, yeah, there's no, what do you say? There's not a big enough check that I will sign for a Super Bowl, but we keep seeing like these same results, and we keep seeing like moves like this. Like you get and you know what? Let me ask you something. Do you think the trouble in paying Micah Parsons had anything to do with Prescott's current contract?
No, I think they could have been creative. I'm sure they could have reworked a couple deals if there was an issue getting to that specific number. Micah's agent was actually on a network earlier this week, and he
Mhm.
said the Dallas offer never exceeded 41. So you see there's about 6 million difference and 30 million over the value of the contract if you do it over the year by year. For them to say they couldn't find that somehow or restructure a couple players on the roster, or a couple players wouldn't do that for Micah to stay in Dallas, I think is absolutely ridiculous. It's kind of like when Trent Williams all of a sudden held out last year and it wasn't expected, and then George Kittle restructured, Christian McCaffrey restructured, all these guys restructured almost immediately to benefit the team. Yes, they get paid on the restructure, but it was a benefit to get Williams in the locker room quicker and get his holdout ended.
Okay. I can. I mean, I can most definitely understand that they could have. Oh, look at this! Angel Reese suspended for Friday's Sky Fever game. All right, and so yeah, I mean, from the documentary, because this has been a hot, well, not the hottest thing on Netflix, but a very popular thing on Netflix as well. Um, so Jones himself said, "If you can give someone else the credit, you can conquer the world." Ironic, because that seems to be Jones' biggest issue over the years, which is true. He once said to a reporter at an NFL meeting, "Stick around, or you'll miss the story of the year. I'm going to fire that MFer Jimmy Johnson, that disloyal SOB." Um, Jimmy Johnson, he wasn't happy with cameras in the draft room. He was in it to win. It wasn't for the show. Of course, Jerry Jones was in it for the show, and at the time, he had yet to win a ring. On the Walker trade, he said, "Victory is a thousand fathers. Defeat is an orphan. At times, you have selective amnesia." Jones claims it was Tex Ram who first floated the Tex Ram who first floated the idea to him. Jones also was quoted as saying, "I'm more disciplined when it's challenging. When we're on top of the world, I'm liable to break the damn thing." Y'all keep in mind, these are typical comments from your typical, billionaire owner. They all got egos. They all have the world full of money to throw around. Finally, Jones' wife says, "You can't just help it, can you? Can't live with it going good. You can't just do it. Can't handle solid, really good times." On Jones firing, and this is why I've long said, this is the only dude who can run a coach who just won two Super Bowls for you out of town.
Yeah, and then if you go over the next like 8 years or so, Switzer got ran out, Parcells got ran out, and there was a big thought that Parcells was gonna, reclaim their glory there, and Parcells walked away from it, claiming Jones was just too much. There's an interesting clip on the Netflix where Jones is actually talking to Switzer, and he's like, "I think this guy should play tight end," and Switzer's like, "That's not your job."
Yeah, and,
And
and
I
it
think
goes.
that's a huge part of the problem is he won't humble himself to just being general manager and owner, which is a lot already, but you've got to stay out of the coaching stuff. And then, that was something him and his son, they're not, I don't want to say they're butting heads, but they're having a debate on the way the special portrays it is, his son is more of the, Kyle Shanahan, um, Sean Payton, X and O guy, where Jones literally said, I think the head coach needs to be more egotistical and charismatic. Um, and obviously, we've seen the teams that have shined lately, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Eagles, they have coaches that are solid with the X's and O's. They're
Mhm.
not, they're big presences per se, but they're not, say, Bill Cowher. They're
Right.
not what those guys were back in that day where coaching was a little different then. The head coach was, I don't want to say more of a manager, but he relied more on his coordinators than the now where you see like the 49ers, there is no offensive coordinator. It's Kyle Shanahan, head coach, offense coordinator.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he wears both
And
hats.
You just like you saw Salea do with the Jets, head coach, defensive coordinator. You
and
see more
defensive
of that
coordinator.
now. Lions Campbell, defensive coordinator.
Yeah,
So and he relies on a good offensive mind to run his offense. But I think back then when Jones was successful in with the bigger coaches name wise, it was a different time in terms of how the coaching staff was constructed.
yeah, yeah. It was, a couple of years ago, probably about 2 years ago, when Bill Belichick had left New England, and they were kind of throwing names around, or as far as, oh well, what if Bill Belichick went to the Cowboys? And I was like, look, Belichick came from Parcells. If Jones ran Parcells out of town, what makes you think him and Belichick are going to get along?
Right. I mean, especially, it took a while for the whole thing with Kraft to kind of deteriorate, and we know there was other things there, but I couldn't have seen a Cowboys run less than more than a season, or Belichick just walks out halfway. He's like, I'm done.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, we'll go on to our next topic here, and these are MLB standings heading into the final season. Did I say final season stretch? Final season stretch. Most teams have 22, 23 games remaining. The Rangers in the AL West are now 1.5 game back of the last wild card spot, and they're plus 90 in run differential. They were plus 72 on July 31st. The Rangers lost 2 in a row this week for the first time in a month. Seattle, as we mentioned on the deadline show, didn't do enough at the deadline to help their pitching, and they've played under 500 ball since the deadline. And they were on a bit of a, like we were talking about, like Milwaukee being the hottest team in baseball. Seattle went on a little streak themselves. Uh, Take it away, Sean.
Yeah, no, and we kind of sat here and questioned, like, they made so
Did you
many
freeze?
moves. Why
I think
why
you
didn't
froze.
they grab some pitchers? And it's kind of come back to bite them here. The Rays and the Royals are now also within 2.5 games of them. They just got swept by the Rays to start this week. And they've also allowed the Guardians to climb within 3 games of them. So now they're fighting off 4 teams, or excuse me, 3 teams for that final spot, instead of, or 4 with the Rangers. Instead of just really, they were just battling with Texas when we headed into that deadline. Now they've let these other teams kind of creep in there with this they've played under 500 for a month now. And the last week, I believe they're the last 10, excuse me, they're 3-7. So, they've really got to straighten up to hold on to that last spot. And Texas and the Royals and the Rays are all coming strong. The Guardians, they've kind of crept in there, but I think with their schedule, they'll probably fade back out. But the Rays and Royals continue to move up on them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then let's see, Yankees and the Red Sox, they have a 4.5 game lead on the top two wild card spots, but also these two teams are also fighting for the division as well. I know Jacob Christener, last night on Confidential, he said the Yankees would overtake and win the AL East. But both teams trailed Toronto by 3.5 for the AL East, and at one point in time, Toronto was the hottest team in baseball. And all three teams play at least one series versus each other in the final 3 weeks. Now, switching it up to the National League, the Padres have moved to 2.5 for the Dodgers, 2.5 back of the Dodgers at the deadline, as they were 3 games back, but not much gain. So it's like since then they tied with them, then they went a game ahead, and then they went back. So it's kind of like they're kind of trading punches at this point. Um, they moved ahead of the Reds and the Mets, who were both behind at the deadline, and they're 1 game ahead of the Mets for the third wild card spot. Sean, more on the National League?
Yeah, so Padres have been playing good baseball, but the Dodgers have just continued to play the baseball they've played for the last 2 seasons, so they haven't gained much ground there. I don't recall if those 2 teams play in this final couple weeks. I think they've actually wrapped up for the season. So any ground the Padres have to make, they've got to do it, head-to-head days when they're picking up wins and the Dodgers are losing, or they're picking up more series wins on those short 3-game trips. The Mets right now, they're up 5 on the Reds, who we thought would slow down a little bit. But now they've got the Giants, who are 4 behind. The Giants have won 9 of 10. They've actually passed the Reds just last night with their win over the Rockies. The Mets and Reds play this weekend, so the Giants could technically gain some more ground on both teams, depending how that series ends up. Now that is in Cincinnati, as we've talked about. The Mets have been horrible on the road. They did start this week taking 2 or 3 from Detroit, but their schedule to end the season is just it might be hard for them to hold off the Giants here.
It's
They've got
tough.
road series with the Reds, Phillies, and Cubs. You've got home series with the Padres and the Rangers, who are obviously in the midst of a heavy wild card chase at well. And then their easiest series on paper are the Nationals and the Marlins, but the Marlins just took 3 or 4 from them in New York. So you can't even lock that up for the Mets at this point. I think you've got 3 divisions that are locked up based on how the
The
teams are
Marlins are
playing.
scrappy.
Milwaukee, Detroit, and Philadelphia. All the other divisions, like you talked about, are within that 3.5 game, you know, gap in this last 20 games. So all those other divisions are up for grabs.
Yeah, I mean, it really would be something if the Giants managed to come all the way back and take the final wild.
And how many times have we seen them do this?
Okay, I'm sorry, my signal's freezing up, man. You there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What was it? Okay, just to kind of wrap things up here. My signal's shitting on me today, but let me see here. So yeah, it is going to be interesting down the stretch. As you said, yes, I don't see Philadelphia losing the series. Milwaukee, I actually have as the top seed in the National League. Actually, you know what? I will ask you the same question that I asked last night on Cub Confidential just to wrap things up. Who are your top 2 seeds? These are the 2 seeds that are going to get a first round bye. The top 2 seeds in each league. Who do you have?
I think you're looking at Milwaukee, and I don't think Detroit is ahead of Houston right now, but I think Houston's going to grab that top seed over there.
And a top seed in the American League.
Yeah.
Okay then. Who do you have as the second seed in the American League?
I think Toronto's going to hold off the Yankees and the Sox. Actually, I think because the teams are going to beat each other up a little bit, I think that's going to benefit Toronto, and I think they'll end up there. I think Detroit will slip a little bit here. They kind of started it early this week. I think Detroit's a little above where everybody kind of expected them to be. So I think that may even itself out over the last 20 games, and I think you'll see either Toronto or maybe like Christner said, the Yankees come in and sneak in. They may sneak in over Toronto and Detroit. You know,
Okay.
it's
And in the
amazing
National
how
League,
they.
who do you?
I was gonna say it's amazing how much the Yankees have turned it around the minute Judge has been healthy because they had been 8 games back and now they're about to flip this division.
Yes, they are. And then in the National League, who do you have as the top 2 seeds?
I think Milwaukee and Philadelphia or Milwaukee and LA, excuse me. I don't think the Padres will pass them because they don't have that head-to-head series. So, and I don't see Milwaukee slipping. They've been ever since that was it they run off 13 or 14 games. Ever since that long streak they've had, it seems like every time you look at their last 10, they're 7-3, 8-2.
Yeah.
They've been really hot the last couple months. I don't see that changing the last 20 games, but it's this is the dangerous thing about baseball, right? And as you cut out there, I had asked you, how many times have we seen the Giants do this now? Kind of be
Yeah.
quiet all year,
And
all of a
then
sudden August, September, and then they win a World Series in October, and no one saw it coming.
and nobody saw it coming. Exactly. Nobody said. Well, I will tell you this much though. When they won in 2010, like we pretty much knew the outcome of that series before the first pitch. In the Giants. They weren't beating the Giants. The next year they went, they should have beat the Cardinals. But that Giants team, they wasn't nobody beating them Giants. They were too. Their pitching, their bullpen, and their starting rotation was immaculate.
Yeah, no, they used to have some arms. It reminded me of what Atlanta used to have back in the '90s with Glavine, Smoltz, and Avery. It's like you had just a three-headed monster, and they had a very similar setup then.
It was who was the three of them? So it was Baumgartner. Wait, yeah,
You had Matt Cain,
Kane, Romo.
and then I believe at that point Lincecum had become the third
No, no,
starter. He had eased off a bit of who he was, but he was still a guy.
yeah. Okay. Okay then. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are out of time. Thank everybody for tuning in to the Sports Insiders. We'll see you next week with more inside of the business side, and also we'll put together some numbers. Think because we got the Canelo Crawford fight coming up and if we get maybe get some preliminary numbers or maybe even some predictions. But we got that coming up most definitely. And yeah, we will see you all next week.